Coming up on Theater Talk.
No, I think it's
totally,
a boring
it's great.
play with no characters.
These two can talk about it.
Ferryman.
Ferryman was such an event. It's like 19 hours long. It's British. It's about Northern Ireland. It has a baby. It has geese. It has ducks. Everything happens in the last 3 minutes, but still, it's a slam dunk for best play.
Hi, I'm Julie Halston, and I am one of the co-hosts of Theater Talk. I wish I could be with you tonight, but I am about to go on stage in a Broadway show called Tootsie. So I can't be with you, but I love you all, I miss you all, and have a wonderful evening of Theater Talk. On with the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the stars of Lincoln Center Theater's hit production of My Fair Lady, Harry Haddon Payton and Alan Corduner.
Hello. Welcome, Theatre Talk, to the Lincoln Center.
For the first time.
For the first
Fantastic.
time.
Tonight will be our 438th performance of My Fair Lady.
Really? Woo! So thank you for your support, and without much ado,
Let us welcome
your hosts for this evening,
Susan Haskins.
and Jesse Green.
Woo!
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This is fantastic. And you know, Jesse Green wrote the great review you got last year in the New York Times.
You're not supposed to say that. They don't know, they don't read, they don't...
No, we never read them.
Thank you both for dropping by.
Thank you for
Have a
having
great
us.
show. Good show tonight.
Gonna go warm up.
Why can't the English teach their children how to speak? This verbal class distinction by now should be antiquated.
Let me introduce Michael Musto of NewNowNext.com, Elisabeth Vincentelli of The New Yorker and The New York Times, Adam Feldman, theater and dance editor of TimeOut New York, and the president of the New York Drama Critics Circle, who just made their awards, and Jesse Green, my beloved, one of my beloved co-hosts, co-chief theater critic of the New York Times. Before we do the Tony predictions, here's our Tony prediction film.
The harvest is sacred. The harvest is breath and life and spirit.
Everybody hungry, everybody tired, everybody slaves for the sweat of his brow. The wage is nothing and the work is hard. It's a graveyard in Hades town. I won't let you down because you believed in me.
I'm just Michael in the bathroom. Michael in the bathroom at a party. Forget how long it's been.
Hi, I'll be your guide. I'll be your GUIDE to the other side. Wunderbar, wunderbar. What a perfect night for love.
A few years ago, I was thinking about the Constitution for various reasons.
Hamlet is life.
What does that mean? I don't know, it means what it means.
I have no strength to think anymore.
You have no strength. The minute there's trouble, you have no strength.
Joe, you're doing the same thing again. Whenever there's trouble, you yell at me and you think that settles it.
Don't praise my charm too much. Don't look so vain with me.
What did I say? It was always there, waiting to be awoken. All that stuff you English buggers think of when you think of us, that we're what, essentially savage? Well,
I'm just saying.
If I could turn back time, if I could find a way, I'd take back those words that hurt you, and you'd stay.
Try to imagine the world the other way around. Try to imagine every book, every magazine, every TV show, every movie was trying to tell you that you should be homosexual. But you knew that you weren't. You knew that for you this was right.
Oh, stop. You're talking crazy.
I'm coming, wait for me. I hear the walls retreating, the falling of the feet, and it sounds like coming.
And Howard.
Good evening. It is Friday, September 19th, and I'm Howard Beale.
Cheers all. Here's to the harvest.
To the harvest.
I know Hadestown is there twice, but I liked it that much. Shall we start with Best Play or Best Musical?
Let's start actually with the smaller category, Best Musical Revival.
Oh, okay.
So this year, only 2, and both of them were nominated, amazingly enough. Have we any doubt about who will win?
This was such a weird season. It was like King Lear in a casino lobby and a Kool and the Gang jukebox musical. You know, I mean, Broadway has become East Village performance art in the 80s mixed with Branson. And I kind of like it. I don't know. In this case, Kiss Me Kate was slightly wokeified in that they rewrote it to make it clear that Kate isn't, or Lily aren't bad people. They are bad because men make them bad. I got that already from the original. Oklahoma was extremely wokeified. So I'm going to say because it's thrillingly revisionist, it's going to be Oklahoma.
Well, Oklahoma has gotten a lot more attention because it is making much bolder choices. But the flip side of that, I think, is that there are a lot of people who really don't like Oklahoma. And I loved Oklahoma when I saw it at St. Anne's Warehouse last year off Broadway, and I loved it again when I saw it on Broadway. But they keep the house lights up at this production. And that one of the interesting things about that is you can see everyone who isn't liking it across the way from it. And so I'm there, I love this production, and I do think it should win. I think it's a remarkable reinvention of the material. But I do wonder whether the Tony voters, who are not necessarily the wokest and hippest voters all of the time, will go with it all the way. Because Kiss Me Kate is also a very entertaining and well-produced show with very good choreography, for example, which I think may very well win. So my money is still on Oklahoma, but it's not a done deal.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Actually, I could see a lot of people leaving at intermission at Oklahoma, which despaired me, I'll say. Yes.
But at intermission, you got free vegetarian chili. And no utensils, because, suddenly we're going to be authentic. You have to use some crumbling piece of cornbread to slop it up.
No, there's a spoon. Did they give you a spoon?
You got a spoon?
I got a spoon.
So it's interesting to note that the composition of the Tony's nominating committee is an entirely different thing from the voters, and this year especially so. If you look through the names, there's a lot of younger people this year, a lot more people representing downtown, or what we traditionally thought of as downtown theater, and that may speak to what you're saying, a difference between what we see nominated and what may or may not win.
Well, but then let's go to a bigger category,
yes.
Because this one was just, obvious what it was.
This was our warm-up.
Right. Yes, this was our warm-up. All right, so now I'll go to Best Musical. Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations, Beetlejuice, Hadestown, The Prom, and Tootsie.
I'm going to say that I hate Hadestown with the intensity of 1,000 songs.
Oh,
wait, that for her is a mild disagreement.
That's right.
So.
All right, tell us why you hate it.
Okay, so I saw it at New York Theater Workshop 3 years ago when it premiered there, and got very good reviews.
Did you hate it then?
Yes, absolutely. I would have left, but say for my professional integrity, so I stayed to the end. And I thought it was one of the tritest. The music, it is so bland. I could not believe what I was hearing, and I thought, this is insane. This is a complete living nightmare.
Oh.
So then I went again, of course, obviously, and to its credit, what was interesting, it's a completely different staging, but the show is even worse. Because whatever fig leaf of political, message was in the downtown version is completely gone. Like the book is so bland and weak. And
well, I will say that Elisabeth has strong feelings about this show, but the population of Hadestown is not actually that big.
Wow, that's good. That's good.
I think,
That's
you know,
good.
actually the show has a lot of enthusiasm behind it and a lot of nominations, the most of any show this year. I think when you're in that audience, even if you didn't like it, Elizabeth, you'll have to concede that most of the
Yes,
audience
no,
seemed
it's
very
true.
enthusiastic about the show. I think that it has a terrific score. I agree with you. I don't think that the book is particularly strong. I don't think that's the strength of the show. I think it's more about the environment that it creates and about the musical world that sweeps you up into it. But I think those will be enough, and I think it is the odds-on favorite to win Best Musical.
Do you really?
Oh my God, that depresses me.
I think it's going to win, yeah. I mean, it's all atmosphere, but it's beautifully done atmosphere, and it fits the trajectory of the best musical of the last several years. Off-Broadway, though in this case it was actually a school musical, then it was a concept album, then it was off-Broadway, and it has that kind of pedigree and that kind of pretension to it. I love Tootsie. I thought it was extremely enjoyable, though it didn't make one iota of sense. I mean, he's trying to show that you learn so much, and it's so hard to be a woman. I learned so much. What did he learn? The second he's a woman, he gets the part in the musical of Romeo and Juliet. He gets him to rewrite the whole show so it's about him. He's headed for the Tony, just like Santino Fontana is. A hot guy in the show is suddenly begging him for sex. The woman of his dreams, who doesn't pay him any mind as a man, suddenly wants to have lesbian sex with him. It's so hard to be a woman. Not to give away spoilers.
But I agree with you, though, it's with the trajectory that the Tony voters go for what I will call art. And I did think that Hadestown was a work of art. It's not based on a well, you know, I laughed because Elizabeth had to explain on Twitter that.
No, a friend overheard at the bar at Hadestown, these two guys talking, and they were like, "Oh my God, there's all those movies, all those musicals, the best on movies, and finally there's one that's an original story that's never been done before."
No, but it is largely an original story. The truth of Hadestown is that it's ostensibly about Orpheus and Eurydice, but it isn't very much about Orpheus and Eurydice. They discard almost all of the original story, and they create their own story, which involves capitalism and climate change and all these things that are not really part. Yeah, they do.
As with the band's visit and Fun Home, it's this kind of artistic patina to the things that the corporate musicals, and I thought Tootsie was terrific, but they just don't have it. Yeah.
Beetlejuice is an amusement ride. It's not a musical. Ain't Too Proud I like, but the Cher Show was better. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
And the
So
prom,
true.
I love the prom, except the central character is a lesbian who has no character. She's just a lesbian. You know?
That's not true.
You know,
That's
and she
not
has
true.
a girlfriend. And what do they do
That's not
together?
true.
They just kind of sing songs.
And I think
Okay, that's not true. That's not true. But the character, she's better than that.
Oh, her whole
There's
character.
more.
Thanks, guys.
I liked.
That is not true. That is not true. That is
The
not
actors,
true.
the horrible narcissistic actors, were great. We wanted more of them, less of the lesbian.
All right.
I liked Tootsie
Or
and
a
the
better
prom.
lesbian. I'm a lesbian myself.
This is not going to end well.
Elizabeth.
Oh, no, I think I liked Tootsie and the Prom a lot. I thought they were both very entertaining, kind of old-fashioned musical comedies. But I think if you just from the feel of the waters right now, it seems like both of those shows feel a little old-fashioned for where the Tonys want to envision themselves right now. And I do think Hadestown.
No, I agree. I mean, it's, yeah.
That's what you think will happen. What would you choose?
Tootsie.
Yeah, I think Tootsie will win. I think that the voters have not changed that much, but we shall see.
And we both liked Head Over Heels, which got 0 nominations.
That's true.
Yeah. All right.
I liked it
So
too.
I would have picked Head Over Heels over
Hadestown.
over And Too Proud.
It sounds like
gonna go in that
you would have picked a piece of dust moving across the stage over Hadestown.
I might have been more entertained by that piece, although eternal love to Patrick Page.
But I think it's also about, to some extent, it's about how many other awards it will gather up.
Well, so
because then we get, so I think that Hadestown, for example, is going to get Best Score. I think it's going to get Best Director. I think it has a real chance at some of the creative categories and at orchestrations.
Yeah.
And eventually those things kind of come together into an overall wave, as opposed to, I think, Tootsie, which is guaranteed to win Best Actor and almost guaranteed to win Best Book. And other than that, I don't know.
But some years that does happen. Other years it sort of distributes. And this is a year that had a lot of different kinds and a more than usual number of fairly good product. to give awards to, wouldn't you say?
No, it's a good year.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really good year for musicals because the diversity is, again, I don't like Hadestown, but I'm glad it's there, you know, because it covers it's part of such a broad range.
That is
It's
the nicest
exciting.
thing I've heard you say about it. Well, I think we better move on.
So are we all giving the best actor in a musical Tony to Santo Fantina?
No, I am not.
The Santo
I'm giving it to
Laquasto.
Santino Fontana.
Yes.
All right. So,
Which, by the way, can I just say that I'm really bummed that this is such Santino's year because Brooks Ashmanskas is so good in the prom.
Yes.
And he's always in the supporting role, and finally he makes it to the leading.
You know what? Santino Fontana is a hardworking actor who has shown in a lot of shows through the years. And he has to make that transition. He has it's a year of really the falsetto voice between, the
Reeve
A-
Carney
A-
and
Crowd
Hadestown.
Hadestown and Tootsie.
Yeah. Let's complete this quartet of awards with the best leading actress in a musical.
musical,
I don't
okay.
think there's much debate.
all right,
here.
but let me read them. Stephanie J. Block from The Cher Show, Caitlin Kinnunen from The Prom, Beth Level from The Prom, Eva
Eva Noblezada.
Thank you very much from Hadestown, and Kelly O'Hara from Kiss Me Kate.
When I said little debate, you said, oh, really?
I don't know because
So,
who do you, I don't see a front.
oh, I thought Stephanie J. Block was
it's Stephanie
kind
from
of,
the
Oh, okay, all right. So I'm afraid that you're gonna break my heart. So I was.
It's Eva Noblezada. I'm so
Well,
sorry.
I liked Eva Noblezada. I can't say her name, but I thought she was terrific. Well, you hated everything.
I thought she was very weak. There's.
Oh.
I think Stephanie J. Block's been doing a lot of good work for a lot of years, and people just a lot of goodwill toward her. She's wonderful in the Cher
So
Show.
she's getting kind of lifetime.
Yeah, and there's 3 shares, but she's the main share.
she's
She has the
also-
lion's share.
But it's not just for her.
She's.
Don't laugh. Just encourages it.
I'm just saying.
He's terrible. Just don't.
I just want to say I don't think it's just for her career.
No.
She is really doing it. And I didn't love the Cher Show, but she is astonishing in it.
She gets the essence of Cher without doing an impression. She doesn't sell her soul, in order to play Cher. And she's much better as Cher than she was as Liza in The Boy from Oz.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, or as the Pirate Queen. But let's.
Oh, you know what? I like that show.
Oh my God!
All right. Context for
Now
Hades.
you're just cursing me.
All right, should we move to Best Play?
Yes.
All right. Best Play. Choir Boy by Terrell L. No, I'm not even going to say their names because I just can't. All
You
right.
say the play name, and then we'll say.
Okay, very good. Choir Boy.
By Terrell Alvin McCraney.
The Ferryman.
By Jez Butterworth.
Gary, a sequel to Titus Andronicus.
By Taylor Mack.
Inc.
James Graham.
James Graham.
And What the Constitution Means to Me.
Heidi Schreck.
Okay.
So, where are we?
Well, where we are, especially in this category, is really about what isn't there. And what isn't there is To Kill a Mockingbird, and that is a very strange and very striking omission because it's been nominated for 9 other awards and not this one. It's worth making a point of saying that this particular award is an award for the production of the play. It's not just for the script. So you can't just say, well, they loved everything about it except the play itself, because everything about it is included in this category. And that's why in past years you've had Best Play winners like War Horse or Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, which are not necessarily the best play on page, but which have other things going for them in the production. And that seemed very clearly to be where the general gestalt of the votership was this year, and yet it wasn't nominated, and you have to wonder what that's about.
All I can think of is they're thinking it's making so much money, it's going to run for 5 years, they don't need it. Or after Green Book winning, which I liked, winning the Oscar, people are wary of another thing that is perceived as a white hero of racism, winning Best Play. Am I right? I wasn't even invited. They invited me 3 weeks after opening, if you interview one of the supporting actors, and I was like, I don't make deals like that. So I heard it's good, but then again, I heard Hadestown was terrible, and it's great.
There are a couple other factors that I think may be playing in here. One is the play was involved in a lot of legal shenanigans getting to Broadway when you can read about them in the Times. And then also, is it a new play? This is a category for new plays. It's definitely a totally new adaptation. There may have been a feeling among the nominators that it didn't belong in this category, and it was pushed into the category by the producer.
Well,
I don't know.
it wasn't a revival. It's an entirely new play.
Well,
it's based on a previous source. I mean, Beetlejuice is an original musical. It's based on an original source. That's not an argument. There's something else going on here, and it may have something to do with some animosity towards the history of this particular production. I think it probably does, because I can't imagine any other explanation.
And the history was the producer and the estate for Harper Lee were suing.
Yeah, they were in the legal battle getting it there, and then there was a kerfuffle about not allowing other small companies to do other adaptations of it, and that came off very badly, and then they did some damage control, but maybe not enough. I mean, Scott Rudin is the producer. He has a lot going on Broadway this year. He's arguably the most important, most adventurous producer on Broadway, but there's a perception out there sometimes that he can come off a little strong. And
but he also produced Gary.
Yeah, he produced Gary. Yeah.
Well, and
But Gary didn't have that particular history.
But Gary was a surprise on the list, a positive surprise in the way that Mockingbird was a negative surprise. I don't mean positively and negatively critically, but in that Gary, a very downtown sort of play, would have been on Broadway was already a surprise, and then that it was nominated for Best Play, the reviews were not stellar across the board.
I think that's why I don't think it's a Scott Rudin dig. I think it's more about the baggage of what's around.
Well, given what is nominated, what do we think is going to win?
I love the Heidi Schreck play, but I don't think a play where someone plays themselves has ever been in contention before. The funny thing about Ink, which is the play about Rupert Murdoch, it really shows him to be a crass, kind of horrible panderer who will do anything for money.
Who needs friends when you have readers?
The New York Post, which is a Murdoch publication, raved about it.
It's
proving the point of the play, that Murdoch publications will print anything.
Yeah, I think The Ferryman is the favorite here, and I think it deserves to be. I think it's an extraordinary play. It just won the New York Drama Critics Circle Award for Best Play. It has the most nominations of any play, tied with To Kill a Mockingbird, but this one is eligible for Best Play, and I think it's an amazing effort. It's a huge cast. There's a goose, there's a baby, there's dancing. I mean,
well, now you know the recipe to get a Tony.
Yes.
A
Bring the
goose. And Elizabeth? Thank you.
Yes.
I forgot already.
My own favorite is Ink, actually. And even though I did work for the Post, I think the play is actually very critical of Murdoch and makes fun of it, and it shows Murdoch, or
That's what I'm saying. And the Post said it was a wonderful portrait of the Confucius of journalism. I'm serious. Confucius was about truth and honesty and justice.
All right, and I think Ink is a boring play with no characters and a false climax.
Really?
So, we'll agree to disagree. Yeah,
Turnabout is fair play.
I know. I think it's a boring play with no characters and just a series of incidents and a lot of noise.
You don't think the editor that Johnny
These two
Miller
can talk about
is-
it. Ferryman. Ferryman was such an event. It's like 19 hours long. It's British. It's about Northern Ireland. It has a baby. It has geese. It has ducks. Everything happens in the last 3 minutes, but still, it's a slam dunk for Best Play, and it's noblezada.
Thank you.
I just want to say I also think The Ferryman will win, but I would have voted for What the Constitution Means to Me, because I have to live by what I wrote, whether I agree with it or not.
So let's move on to Best Leading Actor in a Play. Bryan Cranston, Network. Patty Considine for The Ferryman. Jeff Daniels, To Kill a Mockingbird. Adam Driver, Burn This. And Jeremy Pope from Quiet Born.
Oh, I just worry that Bryan Cranston isn't getting enough exposure.
Right.
That might hurt his chances, but I think that he is going to be he's the top contender. It was not a production that I particularly liked. I had the same problems with it that I had with Ink. I thought it was very noisy. I thought it didn't really care about any of its characters, but I thought that Bryan Cranston was the one that it cared about, and he, it was one of those shows that was half multimedia and half live, and he is extraordinarily gifted at both of those things and at creating spaces between them. So it was a perfect vehicle for him, and he was. But this was one of those categories this year that I thought there were 10 or 15 people who could easily have been nominated, and I wouldn't have complained. This was an embarrassment of riches this year.
Well, Jeff Daniels is basically stepping into Gregory Peck's Oscar-winning shoes, and Bryan Cranston had to step into Peter Finch's Oscar-winning shoes.
So who do you think between the two of them, or
I
is it
didn't
between
see
the
To
two
Kill
of
a
them?
Mockingbird, but I thought Bryan Cranston was brilliant, and I'm not always a fan of his acting, but I thought he made that part his own. He brought so much heartbreak and pathos. He became like a screaming Fox News anchor, but somebody who actually cares, and somebody with real ethics and who's just concerned about the world falling apart. I thought he did an amazing job, and he was made to come into the audience. They made it interactive. I love Network.
I think Jeff Daniels is going to win. That's just my sense.
I agree, actually. I would prefer Cranston, even though I didn't like Network. But I have a feeling that Jeff Daniels, and maybe because the play is not nominated.
Right.
But there will be other opportunities to give To Kill a Mockingbird. I think it will win for Best Featured Actress, for example, for Celia Keenan-Bolger. I think it has good shots in, I think, Best Lighting for Jennifer Tipton, maybe, for To Kill a Mockingbird.
Well, they're going to take that to the bank.
I would also...
Winner, Best Lighting of a play.
I want to see that show. That one, Best Lighting. I would say also that I really enjoy Adam Driver's performance. He's not going to win, but boy, that was fun. That made no sense, that performance. I didn't know what he was doing, but it was so much fun to watch. Every time he was on, the stage was just like, oh, what is he going to do?
Yeah.
It was great.
I agree.
loved
It's one
it.
of the best performances I've seen in a
So much
long
fun.
time.
Best Actress in a Play is full of beautiful performances,
Oh,
too.
let's read them. Let's read them. Annette Bening, All My Sons. Laura Donnelly, The Ferryman. Elaine May, The Waverly Gallery. Laurie Metcalf, Hillary and Clinton, and Heidi Schreck for What the Constitution.
And Janet McTeer
Women. Ugh.
for Bernhardt Hamlet.
Yes,
so there are
yes,
6 this year in that category. And so that makes the perceived slight and of the omission of Glenda Jackson for King Lear seem even more of a slight. Also, Kerry Washington was not nominated for American Son. But these were all very strong performances. Less, I think, of those, frankly, Glenda Jackson was my least favorite performance of those whatever it is, 8 that we just named. So it's not really a slight to leave Glenda out. I think it's just there are only 5, or in this case 6 slots.
There's a general feeling about who will win this, isn't there?
I would say Elaine May.
I hope it's
Elaine May.
I don't know if
Wouldn't
that's
that be
wishful
great?
thinking, but that's...
Although I have to say, I thought Annette Bening was just marvelous in All My Sons, and just a gorgeous
Annette
performance.
Bening was brilliant, and it was her first Broadway performance in 30 years in All My Sons. And she plays a woman who basically has to believe, has to cling on to the falsehood that her son is still alive. If he isn't, it means that her husband. Should I give another spoiler away? It was written in the 40s. It was written in the 40s. All right, whatever. In any case, she didn't play her like a sort of hazy Jessica Lange O'Neill type of wife. She was very present. But Elaine May was brilliant as a woman kind of losing grip. She made the character so adorable. You felt like it was a beloved relative slipping away before your eyes.
I mean, I don't know in terms of the Tony nominators' demographic, but to me, Elaine May is just such a magnificent performer of my whole life. She invented comedy. Elaine May down there, you know, at the Compass Players, before they had Second City, she is it.
Well, that's part of the genius of casting her in that
yeah,
role,
exactly.
which imposes the same sorts of feelings toward the character as you are expressing toward the actor. So I think we're all in agreement on that.
Now, I want to go to a couple of the featured roles in musicals because I think they're 2 very interesting categories. Best Actor at a featured role in a musical, Andre DeShields for Hadestown. Pronounce his name for me.
Guadalucian?
For Tootsie. Patrick Page for Hadestown. Jeremy Pope for Ain't Too Proud, and Ephraim Sykes for Ain't Too Proud.
This is one of the tightest categories for me, and one of the categories where I wish there were other people nominated. Not that these ones are not. I wish they had enough nominations to spread around to other people. Patrick Vale in Oklahoma should be in this category.
That was my favorite performance of the year, was Patrick Vale, who played Judd Fry in Oklahoma.
And that's at the very center of the reconception.
And half of it's in the dark.
Yeah, just a gorgeous production.
And half of it's in too much light, so you...
John Billman and Tootsie, the hunky, stupid guy, is hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
And Tootsie, you know, I would like them to be options, but they're not. So given the current options, I think probably it's really hard to predict. Patrick Page in Hadestown, who's never been nominated before, and is a remarkable and unique performer. Ephraim Sykes is great in Ain't Too Proud, and Andre DeShields is Andre DeShields, and is also great in Hadestown.
The 2 standouts were Ephraim Sykes and Andre DeShields, in my opinion. Ephraim was sensational as David Ruffin from The Temptations, spinning with that microphone and singing and dancing. I think Andre's going to get it. He's been a legend ever since he played the Wiz, in the original Wiz. Ain't Misbehavin', and such a career. And as you saw from the clip, he enters the stage and it's presence. It's like Elisabeth. Present.
Well, I think Andre de Shields will likely win.
I think so too.
Me too, me too.
I mean, I would say De Shields or Page on this one. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be between the two of them.
All right. Best Featured Actress in a Musical, Lily Cooper for Tootsie, Amber Gray for Hadestown, Sarah Stiles for Tootsie, Ali Stroker for Oklahoma, and Mary Testa for Oklahoma.
I want a three-way tie in this
Yes.
category.
Yes.
I want a
Amber,
three-way tie, Amber
Sarah,
and
and
Sarah
Ali.
and Ali.
Yeah.
I want all three of them to be on stage together in a group hug, and that
agree.
is my dream.
And basically the other two.
Other two are very good.
They're very
So now let's.
But
narrow
also
it down.
another category where I wish there were more. Bonnie Milligan
Bonnie
from
Milligan.
Head Over Heels.
Oh,
I would love
that
to see
was
him there.
Leslie
Yeah.
Kritzer.
Leslie
So
Kritzer
we're
from-
naming a lot of names without really saying much about who they were or what they did. Let's go into that for a minute. Who wants to take up Amber Gray?
Amber Gray is a genius on stage.
Okay, there we go.
She was amazing a couple of years ago or 3 years ago now for Natasha Pierre in The Great Comet of 1812. She has been a downtown actor. She was in Octoroon and other things. She plays Persephone in Hadestown. I think she's the emotional heart of the show. She also has some of the best musical numbers. She dances. She's comedic. She has the audience in the palm of her hand. She's wonderful. And then, someone want to take Sarah Stiles?
Sarah Stiles plays
Sandy.
Santino Fontana's former girlfriend, obsessively neurotic former girlfriend in Tootsie. And she basically has one song, but she does it 3 times. And she is a tornado of energy and, this kind of very savvy neurosis that she has. And she is so wonderful and warm at the same time because that character could be so annoying. And she makes her so warm. That is really part of why the show is great.
Ali Stroker.
Ali Stroker plays Ado Annie in this production of Oklahoma and brings an incredible verve and just joy of performing to the character. An additional thing about her that is used in this show, we talk about colorblind casting and things like that. She is an actor who is in a wheelchair, but it doesn't try to pretend she isn't.
Right.
She uses that as part of her expressive armamentarium. And the choreography that she does is brilliant and carried off again with this joie de vivre that I think will actually end up making her the winner.
And she's so funny. She has these songs that we've heard so many times, and it's so hard to make these comic songs, the old comic songs, seem fresh, and I think she does a wonderful job with it.
Musto, thoughts?
Yes, I'm predicting Ali Stroker. I thought she was brilliant
Yeah.
and reinvented the part and just did amazing things with it.
But again, three-way tie, please.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think Ali Stroker too. What do you
I think so too.
I think so.
Yeah. All right, let's move to the director. Best direction of a musical, Rachel Chavkin, Hadestown, Scott Ellis, Tootsie, Des Mackinac, Ain't Too Proud, Daniel Fish, Oklahoma, and Casey Nicholaw, The Prom.
Is this one of the categories where Hadestown will be rewarded even if it doesn't get Best Musical?
I think Rachel Chavkin's going to win here. I think that even people who don't love
Yeah,
Hadestown can recognize that it's an extraordinary production. She also did Natasha Pierre in The Great Comet of 1812 a few years ago with Amber, and that was another remarkable production that I think had a real shot of winning that year. It didn't, and this will be, I think, Rachel's year. But Daniel Fish, also the director of Oklahoma, certainly has done, I think, really striking work, and it's the work that perhaps announces itself the most clearly as directorial, because everything is such a different choice from what we've seen in the past.
But now I'm going to be an old scold and say that the thing I did not like, I loved Oklahoma up to the intermission, and then on came the Dream Ballet, and I have to say, first they poured out all the mist and smoke. I wish the directors didn't make such a constant use of that substance. But then that Dream Ballet just didn't work for me, and I was with my good friend who's here tonight, and she was sitting there going like this at the level of the music, and it brought me down. Then I came back into the second act, and I got
Well,
back
there's a
into
reason
it.
the Dream Ballet is in Act 2.
Yeah.
Because seriously, I think if they put it at the end of Act 1, you wouldn't come back. I loved it, but as you say, it divides people, so I think Hadestown will be the winner for director.
I agree.
Agree.
And I liked the Dream Ballet. But
I liked it too. I liked it too. I liked the feedback.
I did too.
Imagine 1943 looking at Agnes DeMille suddenly throwing that stuff at you.
Yep.
That's what it was like.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back.
Without the T-shirt.
I suppose it was shocking, but again, enough with the fog. All right. So the next thing is the best direction of a play. Rupert Gould for Ink, Sam Mendes for The Ferryman, Bartlett Sher, To Kill a Mockingbird, Ivo van Hove for network, and George C. Wolfe for Gary, a sequel to Titus Andronicus.
We're running out of time. This is sort of a slam dunk, yes?
I think Sam Mendes. But Bart Scher has a chance for To Kill a Mockingbird, I think. But I think Sam Mendes, I think the production, the sheer scope of The Ferryman.
I know, the geese.
Yeah. Geese!
So tired.
Babies!
The baby.
Dancing!
Best choreography, Camille A. Brown for Choir Boy, Warren Carlisle for Kiss Me Kate, Dennis Jones for Tootsie, David Newman, Hadestown, and Sergio Trujillo for Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the
I think Kiss Me Kate is a slam dunk.
Yeah.
I mean, there are two show-stopping numbers, Too Darn Hot and Tom, Dick, or Harry, which is just beyond. But they're
Now-
going to have to tone down.
Well, no,
they're going to have
that-
to tone
but-
down the Dick stuff.
Number one, they would spend so much time making that show non-sexist, and the choreography was sexist. And secondly, to me, yes, it was.
You are an old school.
I am an old school. And the other thing is, you know, having seen, I saw Kiss Me Kate on television as a child, I've seen it, and that they had to go in the Cole Porter where he was subtly saying every Tom, Dick, and Harry, Dick, and that they had to go, Dick, Dick.
Well, I just said they have to tone that down
Another
for the
demerit.
Tony Awards. But I like that part.
So what about, but what about Choir Boy?
Well, I think it's interesting. This is a case where they drew for best choreography from a non-musical. One of
What does
the-
that say about the state of musicals?
Well, no, I think what
Well,
it says is that the
Also, best
choreography
score.
for Choir
To Kill a
Boy
Mockingbird
was...
is up for best score. What does that say about musicals?
I think it's a recognition of some exceptional work in those categories that was not in musicals. I thought the choreography in Choir Boy was superb by Camille A. Jones, and whether you want it in a category that traditionally rewards musicals, I don't think it's an embarrassment to have it there.
I think Chris Catelli should have been nominated for the Cher Show, but that's another story.
Good point.
And also, I think Spencer Lift should have been nominated for Head Over Heels, but I think that Head Over Heels should have been nominated for a bunch of things that it wasn't nominated.
Now, or do we think that Bob Mackey's going to get costumes?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
All right. So before we close, just one last person. I'll go back to Patrick Vale, the wonderful Judd Fry, somebody else who was egregiously left out, who we
The
didn't
whole
mention.
play of Lifespan of a Fact, which was a hilarious show about fact-checking. Who knew? And Daniel Radcliffe, Bobby Cannavale, and Cherry Jones were terrific.
It was a good year for journalists on stage, actually, between Ink and Lifespan of a Fact.
And Network.
And, Network and, well, for me, I'm with Adam. I really think that Head Over Heels was really willful, and it's really bad that so many of the shows that open early get completely forgotten. And I think only an Audra McDonald, because she's opening in May, could break that curse and get like a 25th Tony, but like, you know, no show opening in May ever wins anything. It's really unfair.
I would like to have seen Erin Wilhelmi, who plays, she's the one who is supposedly raped.
Oh,
and
yes.
Her trial scene was astonishing. The quick characterization and the depth of it were brilliant. I wonder whether, had it opened later in the season, whether Mercedes Ruehl would have been nominated for her performance in
She
Torchstrong.
was in a tough category, though.
Yeah, well, that category has a lot of people who could have been nominated in it.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Michael Musto from NewNowNext.com, Elisabeth Vincentelli, thank you for your scorn from the New Yorker and the New York Times, Adam Feldman from TimeOut New York, Jesse Green, co-chief theater critic of the New York Times. I want to thank you all for coming up. Yeah, it's wonderful. I'm joined by my co-host Jason Zinoman, critic and comedy columnist of the New York Times, and we are joined by critics Ben Brantley, co-chief theater critic of the New York Times, Jan Simpson of Broadway Radio, and Jesse Green, co-chief theater critic of the New York Times. Jesse, I've given the co-host seat over to Jason so that you and Ben and Jan, the critics who see everything, can be on an even keel. And
I'm offended, but I'll live with it.
so it's been an interesting and rather good season this year with some very unusual, some
I'm special.
We don't know what's happening. All right, so with some very unusual productions going on.
When the Tony nominations came out, the first thought I had was a lot of these shows feel like things you would have seen downtown a few years ago. And now,
in fact, you did.
And you actually did. So, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, is sort of Broadway increasingly kind of co-opting downtown, and if so, why?
On the other hand, you have something like Gary, which is
an original Broadway play. I mean,
But by a downtown guy.
By a downtown guy, but I mean, I don't know. I try not to be a geographist. I was catching up on the shows I hadn't reviewed that Jesse had, and I saw within a 3-day period What the Constitution Means to Me on Broadway, Gary, and The Cher Show. And I thought, it's kind of great to have a world where all these can coexist. I mean, Gary to me is so unexpected, and yet my matinee audience loved it. To me, it's vaudeville. What the Constitution Means to Me is a much more sort of interactive. I mean, when I saw that on Broadway, it was amazing, the feedback it got, like all the way through. And then The Cher Show, I think, is like what you would have had, you know, The Follies of another time. I mean, really, that fashion show, it's amazing.
Why is What the Constitution Means to Me, why does that belong in Broadway today, which is just more expensive than ever? You know, we'll talk about it later, but it's not like it's not the same kind of conservative showcase that it's always been in many ways.
Yeah.
So why are artists like Daniel Fish and Heidi Schreck there now?
I'd give a lot of credit to Scott Rudin as the producer. I mean, because he brought those two Eva Van Hove. And wasn't that, for me, that was a door opening, the Eva Van Hove productions of the Arthur Miller plays, A View from the Bridge, and The Crucible, a very exotic Crucible. It was interesting. But after that, it was like, all bets were off as to what kind of talent you would. I mean, you could say Julie Taymor, I guess, did to some extent before.
But you also had something like Fun Home, which started down at the Public Theater, and that came uptown, did well, won awards, and appealed to broad audiences. So
what we consider to be downtown material is still edgy in many of the same ways, but producers have figured out ways to keep the costs down. What the Constitution Means to Me, let's face it, has 2 adult actors in it, and I don't know if the high school girls who are also in it are paid even, but even if they are, that's not a big...
I think they're paid.
I hope so.
Oh, wouldn't that be a great scandal?
Yeah, that would be a good scandal.
Liberal star doesn't pay her.
That's her next play. Her next play.
Those 2 girls
exploitation.
would not stand
Yes,
for
you're
not
right.
being
You're
paid.
right.
They're being paid.
But the producers, even of big shows, the ones that Scott Rudin did with Ivo Van Hove, which were kind of big productions, have figured out ways through a combination of the use of stars for X number of weeks and keeping, or smaller casts, or in the case of What the Constitution Means to Me, and even Gary, as elaborate as that set is, it's just one set. It doesn't change or move around. And they figured out ways to get through a Broadway run without losing too much money.
I mean, you've written very persuasively and passionately about What the Constitution Means to Me. What is it doing that hasn't been done before? Why is this such a unique show?
It's an act of civic engagement, aside from being a drama. Now, some people wouldn't agree that it's a drama. In fact, I read online every day people saying, that's not a play. How can it be nominated for Best Play? And I understand what those people mean, but you know what it's doing is forcing you to rethink what is a play. To my mind, it's a character engaged in conflict that speaks to issues in society, so it's a play. What makes it unique, those of you who don't know what's going on in that play, she's talking about her childhood, her true, actual childhood, where she earned her money for college by going around speaking about the Constitution and engaging in debates and impromptu speeches. But it becomes a deeper story about the ways in which the Constitution, she gradually learns, has failed her as a woman and has failed women in our society. And then, at the end, when you just feel like everything you thought you knew and believed about how great our country is and our Constitution is has been shattered, she then brings up one of 2 young women that we were talking about earlier who are high school students in New York who debate her on whether to get rid of the Constitution or not. And
it's not impromptu, though.
It's pretend impromptu, yes.
As is the entire thing.
And they vote.
Well, that's partly why it's a
play.
Yeah.
I'm not as high on it as Jesse is. But the thing I do like about it is it, along with a lot of other plays we've seen this season, it's breaking the traditional form of what a play is. You have something like Fairview, which was off-Broadway, won this year's Pulitzer Prize, that really shattered what just the traditional form of how we perceive what a play is.
How so?
And that's exciting. Well, Fairview.
Not to get no spoiler alert.
No,
but how
no,
so?
no, Fairview, we can't really
all right.
talk about the second half.
But it's coming back.
In reverse, it puts the audience sort of in
It makes
the catbird seat, shall we say.
It's experimental in how the relationship between the audience and the players, which is something that also, you're talking about, the Times did a package on playwrights of color. And I thought, Ben, you had a really interesting essay in there saying, sort of pushing back on my original question, which saying that still what you see on Broadway is safer than what you're seeing off-Broadway, things like Fairview.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could say some more about that.
First of all, you've got a lot of people who are, for whom a single night at the theater is a major investment. And they don't go, most people I think don't go necessarily to be shaken. I think if theater were more a part of the regular conversation, if we went more often, then it would be fine. I mean, I want to be rattled. I mean, when I go to the theater. When that happens, I'm really grateful and surprised that it can still happen. But often I think people want to be comforted. And there's, I mean, you know, I cried at the end of the prom. I mean, it's, I mean, I like that experience as well. But To Kill a Mockingbird is the hit play about that deals with race. And yet, how did you feel about that?
Well, I wouldn't call it the hit play that deals with race.
Well, exactly. But I was putting it in, you know, comparing to what you'd see how race was presented in that, and then in Fairview or Slave Play. I saw it, I mean, no offense meant, but with an all-white, middle-aged matinee audience, and people were crying, but there was something so self-congratulatory about
I mean, is the implication, and this is for open this up, that part of the reason it is a hit is almost the same reason that Green Book wins the Oscar, that it does play it safe, and it does comfort as opposed to challenge.
I did think of that analogy, yeah.
I don't want to put down theater goers. I think what's happening is women and people of color get opportunity, and Broadway is considered the big opportunity. And we get opportunity on the basis of what we've done. And men, and particularly white men, get opportunity on the basis of their potential. And so right now, we're seeing a lot of people who are trying out different things. I think eventually they will get to Broadway, but if you look at like 3 years ago, we had 5 first-time playwrights. And they were, I think, Lucas Nath, Joshua Harmon, J.T. Rogers, Lynn Nottage, and Paula Vogel. Lynn Nottage and Paula Vogel had already won Pulitzers. These 3 young, and Lynn was in her 50s, Paula was in her 60s. They were making their Broadway debut. Those 3 guys, all really talented playwrights, were in their 30s. We're seeing more women, more people of color tell our stories. And it's just going to take a while for Broadway to say, you've told them enough for us to believe them, to move them to Broadway in significant numbers.
That's assuming that Broadway will continue to make a space for the uncomfortable works, because those people are writing plays from their experience, which isn't as comfortable as the Broadway experience tends to be. We've seen a few holes in that fabric this year, and I don't think we're going to ever see Broadway look like off-Broadway. It may be a better mix than it is now, but there's some shows really want to live in a different environment.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Lucas Nath. He had a new play. Nath, sorry. He had a new play this year as well, Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
And I wonder, there are a lot of explicit political plays that are about real figures living this year. And I was trying to think about sort of the political point of view of these shows, right? And if you look at something like, and you tell me if you disagree with this, but Network and Ink both seem to me to be critiques of populism of various kinds. And I think you could even, although it's less direct, you can make the case for Hillary and Clinton too, although I'd be curious to know what you all think about what the political point of view of that show was. Can you say that sort of there is a certain kind of politics for these plays, political point of view, that may not be in step with the current age we're living in, which is one defined both on the right and the left by populist movements?
I think that's true. When was the last time there was like a great Republican play on Broadway?
Well, that's the thing. You can't turn David Mamet.
Yeah.
Oh, but you said great.
Yes.
Okay.
No, but I mean populist from left and right.
I'm not sure that Inc. was anti-populist.
Okay. But he said critique. It was a very careful choice of word, I think, because it really was an analysis of populism and how we came to be in this particular state that we are, this sort of self-advertising majority rules moment.
And tabloid television and Fox News, which certainly plays populism.
Yeah. Have you all seen Inc.? Yeah.
I think good plays can be about almost anything, and if they're well performed, will almost to a sickening degree go along with what they seem to be saying. I mean, that's why the world we live in is the way it is. People are swayable by the wrong arguments if they're well made. And the same things happen in plays. To me, Inc. was, it had that problem in plays like that the devil was also the hero.
Right.
And so you
didn't like Paradise Lost?
Well, a poem is different from a play anyway. The hero of a play works on you in a different way than Satan in Paradise Lost.
I didn't see him as the hero.
Well, he was the most charismatic
He
and
was
the most
God.
entertaining.
He was God, and he was a God for a cynical age.
Wait, which are we talking about? Paradise Lost?
No, he wasn't God. That was his problem. We're talking about Rupert Murdoch.
Okay, Rupert
is
Murdoch.
God.
But are you saying there's a certain line of thought like there's no such thing as an anti-war movie? Because if you put war on screen, you inevitably romanticize it. Is that true also? No matter how much of a critique of Rupert Murdoch you put on stage, if you put him on there and you show his private life, you humanize him and make him more likable. Is that what you're saying?
Well, maybe not likable, and maybe not humanize exactly.
But it does humanize him in a way, in that it particularizes him. I mean, the prudery is that moment where he objects to the knickers and the scented knickers and the mailings. Did you like it?
And the toplessness on page 6.
Page 3, yeah.
It got very preachy in the end, I thought.
Yeah. But it's true to the extent that you couldn't really put on Broadway a play in which your hero was Trump. Unless one of you wants to go ahead and try. Well, if it were a satire, I mean, they did Julius Caesar in the park with Julius Caesar as Trump, then that certainly got its share of attention.
Right.
If it were presented as this kind of Ayn Rand hero, do you know, this monolith of willpower?
David Mamet would be the one to do it.
But David Mamet would be the one to do it.
Maybe not at this moment.
But you mentioned Hillary and Clinton, and that is, to me, a very different sort of play. I mean, it does purport to reflect on characters we all know, but they aren't really Hillary and Bill. They are.
Well, there are speculations about them made theater, made dialogue. Hasn't that kind of commentary been running in your mind? I mean, for the past 30 years?
Well, we've all been wondering what those conversations were like.
Yeah.
But I think it's ultimately not a play about politics in the way, or about media, or in the way that Inc. and Network are, or about populism. It's a play to some extent about where women are today.
In a way, it's a great sequel. He did A Doll's House Part 2, which was a sequel to A Doll's House, and I thought brilliant. Also with Laurie Metcalf in the lead. And this, in a way, is a sequel to that. It's how did you feel?
Well, it is looking at the way the public responds, and I think that's what Jason's talking about. Mm-hmm. But I think it depends on how you're defining populism. It gets really loosey-goosey the way we talk about it today. And in Hillary and Clinton, Nath is struggling with what is the way for a modern politician to appeal to the public. Hillary is on ideas and intellect, and Clinton is on the visceral and on the emotion. Where populism worms its way in there, I'm not sure.
Well, the way I thought about it when I was watching that, because they explain what went wrong with Hillary, often in terms of her relationship with Bill, how she had to answer for his sins. And I was thinking, what would a Bernie, speaking the other side of populism, what would a Bernie Sanders voter think of this play? which doesn't say, oh, actually, her politics are something I disagree with. She's in bed with corporations. It's not purely because of Bill. That play didn't seem particularly interested in that. As you say, it wasn't a political play. It was about it humanized Hillary Clinton, and so as a consequence, it focused on her relationship with her husband and the impact of that on politics.
Well, and also, what kind of disguise a smart woman has to put on in order to be considered likable.
And the smartest moment for me was, that incredible intersection where she sees herself crying, and she didn't remember crying, and this supposedly was what made her a candidate, an electable candidate.
Now, before we go, I want to ask you one thing. What's a production that you thought was not recognized enough that you really loved?
On Broadway?
On Broadway.
No, anywhere.
But if we liked it that much, we jumped up and down
Yes,
for it.
I see. And
so
then
it would be mortifying to say
then
it
it
wasn't
did okay.
recognized.
What's something away from Broadway that might not be as high profile that you really will stick in your mind?
Well,
this year?
we've mentioned Fairview.
Fairview.
Which did win the Pulitzer. We've mentioned Slave Play briefly.
Was Dance Nation this year?
Dance Nation was
I loved
during
Dance
the
Nation.
course of this past
Clara
season.
Barron,
We didn't really get to talk about some of the other plays by black playwrights, but there were, Ben and I made a list in the Times of 10 plays that we both thought were pretty incredible that all opened in the last 5 years. Which is an amazing change that's happening. That these playwrights, like you said, are getting produced. They're finally getting their first foot in the door of major productions, and therefore we can assume that we'll see them in bigger venues.
And so interesting theatrically, most of them, and the way you were talking about new forms and experimenting with forms and blurring the lines between genres.
I do have to show everyone, because we're here at the Library for the Performing Arts. This envelope is sitting here. And this is a copy of, take a look, Green Groves the Lilac.
Oh my gosh.
There's no songs in it, and this is the kind of thing that they have up here at the Library for the Performing Arts. It's beautiful. And I've been cautioned, I have to put it back in its little, look at this, the typed. It's just amazing.
With
Just
handwritten
look at
notes
that,
in it.
Look at that.
This
look at
library
that.
is so amazing.
Yeah,
Wonderful,
yeah.
yeah.
All right, so I want to thank you all. Jason Zinoman, great job.
Thank you.
Ben Brantley of the New York Times, Jan Simpson of Broadway Radio, and Jesse Green, co-chief theater critic of the New York Times.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you,